We said that nouns function as subjects, direct objects, indirect objects, objects of prepositions, predicate nominatives. Wait! Yes, we've seen subjects. Yes, we've seen direct objects. Yes, we've seen indirect objects. Yes, we've seen objects of prepositions, but no, we haven't seen predicate nominatives. Where is the predicate nominative on my handy-dandy chart? Subject? Nope. Action verb? Nope. Indirect object? No. Direct object? No. Preposition? No. Object of preposition? No! Here's the problem. All the sentences that we've seen so far have had something called an action verb in them. See? Action verb. So, let's go to action verbs. We have to understand that first. This is very difficult. Okay, these are action verbs. Work, sees, gives, sends, dance. The subject is doing an action in these sentences. These are all the examples we've seen so far. So, here we go. Bjorn says, action verbs. Verbs where the subject is performing a task. Action verbs are divided into different categories. There are 2 questions you need to ask yourself about every verb. Number 1, can I see this action or not? Number 2, is the action being transferred from one noun to another noun? These questions are completely unrelated. When you look at an action verb, you answer these 2 questions. They have no connection to each other. We can observe the subject doing all these actions. We can see someone doing these things. So here are some other examples. Cinderella dreams about the prince. The prince knows the other girls at the ball. The prince loves Cinderella with his heart. But these actions, dreams, knows, and loves, these can't be observed. Go to Bjorn on your paper. First classification of action verbs. Number 1, visible. The action can be seen. Number 2, mental. The action can't be seen. Now the second classification is a lot more difficult. An action verb is either transitive or intransitive. When I say the word transitive, what other kinds of words come to mind? Transport. Okay, transport means you're moving something from one place to another. Oh, so these sentences have what we call transitive action verbs. There's some sort of transportation happening. Watch this. The prince sees Cinderella. Cinderella gives the prince a smile. The prince knows the other girls at the ball. These sentences have something called intransitive verbs. Cinderella works. Cindy and the prince dance into the night. Cinderella dreams about the prince. I wonder what the difference is. Take a look at these sentences and see if you can see the difference. These are transitive verbs. The prince sees Cinderella. Cinderella gives the prince a smile. The prince knows the other girls at the ball. These are intransitive verbs. Cindy works. Cindy and the prince dance into the night. Cinderella dreams about the prince. The difference. You want to venture a guess? That's right, direct objects. So the difference is the transitive ones have something called direct objects, which we know so well now. So in the first one, sees is the verb. Who's doing the seeing? The prince. What does he see? Cinderella. The second one, Cinderella is giving. What is she giving? A smile. And the third one, knows is the verb. Who's doing the knowing? The prince. And what does he know? The other girls. Direct objects. In the second batch, the intransitive verbs, my first one says works. Who's doing the working? Cinderella. What is she working? There's nothing there. Cindy and the prince dance into the night. Into the night is a prepositional phrase, so it's gone. Cindy and the prince dance. Dance is the verb. Who's doing the dancing? Cindy and the prince. What is their dancing? There's nothing to go to. Cinderella dreams about the prince. About the prince is a prepositional phrase, so all I'm left with is Cinderella dreams. Who's doing the dreaming? Cinderella. What is she dreaming? We don't know. There's nothing there because the prepositional phrase is thrown away. So there are no direct objects in intransitive verb statements. So remember I said transitive makes me think of transport. So what's being transported in the sentences on the left? We have the action of seeing moving from the prince to Cinderella. We have the action of giving moving from Cinderella to a smile. And we have the action of knowing moving from the prince to the other girls. If the sentence has a direct object, then the verb is transitive, the end. It's a done deal. Second classification of action verbs, transitive. The action is moved from the subject to a direct object. If there's no direct object, there's no transfer of action. Intransitive, the action stays with the subject because there's no direct object for it to move to. Helpful hint, remember to watch out for those pesky prepositional phrases. Objects of prepositions can't be direct objects. We don't even deal with them. We get rid of them fast so that we know what we're really dealing with in the sentence. Okay, but what about those predicate nominatives? We still haven't seen them. Predicate nominative nouns do exist, but they don't exist with action verbs. They only exist with something called a linking verb. When you think of linking, you think of connecting one thing to another. So here are some sentences that contain what we call predicate nominatives. Cinderella is a girl, the prince is a boy, the prince is the ruler, and Cinderella is a servant in her own home. The most common linking verb is a form of to be. Repeat after me. Say, I am.
I am.
You are.
You are.
He is.
He is.
We are.
We are.
They are.
They are.
Those are the forms of to be. I am, you are, he is, we are, they are. I want you to think of a linking verb as an equal sign. Cinderella equals a girl. The prince equals a boy. The prince equals the ruler. Cinderella equals a servant in her own home. Anything that comes after the verb is in the predicate. When we use the word predicate, what that means is everything from the verb to the end of the sentence. And so we call this a predicate nominative because it's in the second half of the sentence, and nominative refers to the fact that it's doing the job of the subject. And so when I say Cinderella is a girl, I could flip that sentence around and it would still mean the same thing. A girl is Cinderella. It's not, we wouldn't want to say it that way, but it's still equal. Girl equals Cinderella. So nominative means it's in the subject case. It's what the sentence is about. Okay, so these nouns, Cinderella is a girl, the prince is a boy, girl, boy, ruler, servant, they aren't receiving any of the action of the subjects. They actually are the subjects, sort of. A predicate nominative is a noun in the predicate that actually renames the subject. Linking verbs. Linking verbs are verbs that are not action. Linking verbs basically just say the subject exists. They're like equal signs. The subject equals something else. The most common linking verb is a form of to be. I am, you are, he is, we are, they are. But a predicate nominative, this is a noun in the predicate that renames the subject. Predicate just means anything in the second half of the sentence, anything after the verb. So whatever the noun is in the second half of the sentence is renaming the subject. Sentence 11, Cinderella is a girl. So first thing I do is I say, what's the verb? The verb is. I put that in my linking verb category. Notice it says linking verb now. I say who or what is doing the verb. In this case, who or what is existing. That's Cinderella, Cindy, she's my subject. And then when I'm dealing with a linking verb, the question I ask next is, what else is Cinderella? So what else is Cinderella? She is a girl. And then from there I say, well, is the word girl a noun? Or is it a word describing a noun? Is it an adjective? The word girl is a noun. So I put girl in my predicate nominative box. That's the place where I put the noun that equals the subject. Cinderella equals girl. Predicate nominative is a noun. Sentence 12, Cinderella is a servant in her own home. What's the verb? Is. Who's doing the ising? Cinderella. What else is she? She's a servant. Is servant a noun or an adjective? Servant is a noun, so I put it in the predicate nominative category. Servant renames Cinderella. What's in her own home? Yay. Prepositional phrase. So put that in too. 13, the prince feels lonely. What's the verb? Feels. I put it in the linking verb. Wait a minute. Stop. Why aren't we using the action verb chart? Isn't feels an action verb?
No.
No, feels is a linking verb this time. We would test it, though, by replacing the verb in the sentence. If it's not is, I need to replace it with something and test it. And when I do that, I take out the word feels and I put in the word is. The prince is lonely. If the meaning of the sentence is unchanged when you pull out the verb and put in the word is or are, then you know you're dealing with a linking verb. So it's not an action. This is called the linking verb test. And even though it's the last thing I'm teaching you, when you're breaking open a sentence, it's actually the first thing you have to do. The linking verb test, to figure out if you're dealing with a linking verb or an action verb, is like this. Take the verb and replace it with either the word is or are. If the meaning of the sentence is basically unchanged, then you have a linking verb. It's an equal sign. Okay, so here's an example. We have the verb tastes, and it's in two different sentences. The soup tastes salty, the chef tastes the soup. I do the linking verb test. I put in the word is. So here's what I have. When I put in the word is, if the sentence stays the same regarding its meaning, then it's a linking verb. But if I put in the word is and the sentence is ridiculous, then I know it was an action verb. So I have now the soup is salty. The chef is the soup. So see, that doesn't make any sense on that second one. That's how I know that the first sentence is a linking verb. Soup equals salty. And the second one, chef equals soup, that's silly. So that must not be a linking verb. And if it's not a linking verb, then it is an action verb. So 13, the prince feels lonely. Who is doing the feeling? The prince. And then I say to myself, what else is the prince? He's lonely. But now what do I do with that word? Now I have to say, is lonely a noun or is it an adjective? That's an adjective describing the prince. So this is called a predicate adjective. So the prince equals lonely, but I put lonely in my predicate adjectives box because it's describing the prince. If I wanted to reorganize this, I could say the lonely prince, yada, yada, yada. You can tell you're dealing with an adjective if you could take whatever word you think might be an adjective and move it to the beginning of the sentence and see if that would start a whole new sentence. The lonely prince, yada, yada, yada. Well, that works fine. So I know it's a predicate adjective. It's a predicate adjective because it's in the predicate. The predicate is anything from the verb on in a sentence. It's the second half of your sentence. So if I have this word that's describing my subject, but it comes after the verb, that's called a predicate adjective because it's in the predicate and it's an adjective describing my subject. So you've just been introduced to the predicate adjective. It's an adjective that describes the subject, but it's after the linking verb. It's the adjective that comes after the linking verb that describes the subject. That's enough.